Hey, what's going on? You were listening to the Road to Rip podcast, and I am here with my co-host Tom. What's up, Tom? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. What's happening?
Not too much, not too much. So today on the menu, we're talking about a really cool technique to make long-term strength gains. This technique actually, it's heavily used by one of the strongest powerlifting gyms in the states, Westside Barbell, and allows their lifters to make year-round gains. And we'll be fleshing out exactly what that is and how you can implement it into your training.
Awesome. Yeah, this is really important, I think, because what I see is a lot of people just doing the same lifts over and over again, and they never really mix it up. They never really use any exercise variation, and it leads to plateaus. And I mean, even like more advanced lifters, if you're only doing heavy compound lifts or just like lifting 3 to 5 days a week in the gym, if you don't mix it up, you're really missing out on a lot of potential strength gains. So this is really going to be a pretty helpful episode for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's an important, that's the bottom line. But it seems like I guess people either fall into like one of two camps or one of two directions where either they're virtually mixing it up all the time and doing muscle confusion, and we know that does not work because in order to make progress, you have to have that reference point. So if you're always doing something different each workout, how can you push for progress? Because everything's different, everything's new, so you're just going to kind of run around in circles. Other people kind of stick to the same stuff all the time and try and progress on it, and that can work, but it doesn't work forever. So eventually, to get to the next step, you need to make some adjustments for your body to have the new fresh stimulus so it can keep improving. Because if you're doing the same workout, same exercises all the time, eventually you just get burnt out from it.
hmm Actually, you know what? Let's elaborate on the whole muscle confusion thing because when you have courses out there like Insanity, like P90X, and I mean even tons of like other more traditional routines that don't involve working out for like an hour and a half or 2 hours a day. But what is it about the whole muscle confusion angle, or about programs that don't focus on progressing on key lifts, that make it more ineffective than something that focuses on making progressions and strength progressions?
Yeah, well, like I mean, that's the like the fundamental growth strategy is progressive overload, lifting heavier weights or doing more challenging movements over time. And so with stuff like stuff like P90X and Insanity, you're not you I mean, what's happening is you're not really pushing for that strength progress. Instead, you're just attacking your body with tons of different variations and circuits and exercises, and it's all kind of changing. I mean, it prides itself on never really never doing the same workout very often. And so, I
hmm
mean, that that is not going to be the most efficient route to building your physique because building your physique comes down to like two things. Getting your nutrition handled so you can promote a lot of leanness, and then getting very strong and building muscle that way. So I mean, the muscle confusion thing, it sounds really cool and fun on paper, and it's enticing, it's compelling because if you feel like you have to do a different workout every single day, then you're more likely to want to have to buy some comprehensive program with 100 different workouts. You're more likely to hire a personal trainer because surely, I mean, if you're new to working out or you're not really experienced, or you don't have a background in training, then I mean, how are you going to come up with a new workout every day? It sounds like a nightmare for most people.
hmm Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, and then like on the other school of thought, you have like I bring this up because again, a year ago I was following Greg Plitt's workout, and from bodybuilding.com, which is just a nightmare if anybody's ever seen it before. Um, and I and it's crazy because like he talks all the time in those videos about like, oh, you gotta beat the hell out of your muscles, and you have to lift it to failure on every single rep, every single set, in addition to working out for like 4 hours a day.
Mhm.
um, and apart from that, he's all about like muscle confusion and mixing up different lifts and hitting things from like all different angles. And yeah, it does sound really good on paper, and it sounds like an intelligent conversation, but it goes directly against the fundamental concepts of like what it actually takes to build muscle and to build strength and density.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so I think we all kind of fall into that myth for a little bit of time. But really the key comes down to having some sort of. This is why I created like I talk about the key lifts, the kino body key lifts, where as long as you're progressing on those over the long term, then your workout routine is awesome. But I mean, if you fall into doing like muscle confusion or very high volume training, well, actually, a lot of times you won't progress at all on these key metrics. You might even regress.
Hmm.
And so that's why I found over and over again that like literally simplicity is the way to go. But there needs to be some variation, but you only want to um, change up anything when you've plateaued, when you're stuck. And that doesn't happen every day, it doesn't happen every week. It happens every, couple months.
Hmm. So then I tell you what, before we actually get into how to mix up your exercises and how to create variation in your routines that will help you surpass plateaus, let's address like where plateaus come in. Like when would you actually start mixing things up? Like what a plateau is and what it isn't.
Mhm. Well, I mean, the first step is if you're following a solid workout routine, then you should be making progress on it for several weeks. If you're stuck at the very beginning of a workout, it means that A, probably the workout's not very effective, it's poorly designed, or B, you're not, there's other factors going on. Maybe you're not really pushing it in the gym. Like maybe you're not like really, you're maybe not really there at the gym. You're just kind of going through the motions, or maybe your nutrition or your sleep or some other thing is getting to you. But if you are making progress and it's going well, usually depending on how advanced you are, someone that's a beginner can make 12 weeks of gains. Someone that's more advanced might only make 3 to 4 weeks of progress. But at that point, what you might find out is you might get burnt out because you're trying to add weight to the bar all the time, and then you're just about to add more weight, and it just like it kills you psychologically, just because there's a lot of pressure and you're doing that same movement, and so it becomes a lot more neurally exhausting, as I say. But if you were to just to change the variation, just do a tiny little adjustment, you're still working the same muscles and movement pathway, but through a slightly different variation. Now I mean, it's a new, fresh stimulus. It's not as nearly exhausting, and it's a little bit more fun and creative. So then, from there, you can start using that movement for a few weeks, a couple months, and then when you go back to your original exercise, you're gonna be like, "Whoa, I'm actually really strong. This feels as well. This feels really fresh."
Hmm. So basically, like one of the takeaways here is that like unless you've been following a workout routine based around progressive overload, where you're actually adding either reps or weights to the bar. Well, actually weights, not just reps. But unless you're following like a heavy strength training based progressive overload routine, for probably 1.5 to 2 years, like past the whole newbie gain period, um, I mean, you should probably do that first before trying to like switch up everything because I have a feeling that some people are going to take this and say like, oh, I've been stuck on I've been stuck on 175 on bench for like the last 2 weeks. I'm going to have to switch it up now for another 3 weeks. Like that's not really the case, So like first of all, follow a strength-based program and develop like the initial strength of like lay the foundation, for example, before moving on to these different variations. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're stuck at like 175 on bench press, there's probably something else going on. Like maybe you need to follow a different workout routine that's more effective.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to do way too much. Maybe you're trained like you're just doing too much volume. Because you should be able, as if you're on the beginner side, you should be able to get to intermediate or even above before having to really implement this style of training.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I mean, most people they're gonna want to really focus on following a really sensible, solid routine, like the stuff that I create for Kino Body, because those work brilliantly for getting strong. I mean, if you just look at the comments, you'll see people being like, "Man, I've been following this routine for a month now, and my lifts are finally like they're shooting up, and they're stuck before." So that's like the first step is following a really solid routine that's proven and is gonna work at building strength. And then, because if you try and just do this exercise rotation on a inferior program, well, it's not going to pay off very much.
Hmm. Yeah, well, and I think it also depends on what your goals are too. I mean, like if your goal is to actually get stronger and to build for strength and density, then you also have to make sure that you're even following a program conducive to that. Like I know a lot of people, myself included, um, I used to lift in the 10 to 12 rep range, and I would just do, I'd walk in there, do 3 sets of 10, and that was it. And I would use a weight that was heavy enough that I was like struggling for reps 9 through 11. Um, but that kind of program isn't really conducive to strength gain. So also, I would say make sure that the program that you're following and the set and rep scheme is aligned with actually getting stronger.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Uh, that's right. And for getting stronger, I actually find like doing reverse pyramid training to be the most effective, where your first set is really heavy in that 4 to 6 rep range. You rest a few minutes and then you drop the weight a bit and you go up to the 6 to 8 rep range. And then if you want to do another final set, you rest a few minutes, drop the weight a bit, and then you go up to the 8 to 10 rep range. And then you're hitting all those three angles. Your first set is the hardest, and that's where you're really hitting that lower rep range. And then you're just attacking some more volume with a bit lighter weight, a bit more reps. I find that to work the most effectively, because if you try and stay in that 4 to 6 rep range for all your sets and go really heavy and hard, it ends up like killing your nervous system.
Hmm. Yeah, well, and you talk about that a lot on Kino Body too, but that's I've been following that for the last 8 to 12 months myself, and I mean it's just crazy. Like the strength gains that I've made just in the last 6 months alone have been just, I mean, it's crazy. I've mentioned on like previous episodes that like in the last 6 months I've added 45 pounds to my pull up. Going from like not being able to do 3 pull ups to doing like my like sets with a plate attached. I mean, it's just crazy, and that's from reverse pyramid training. So, assuming that we are following, a program that's designed for, that's based around, progressive overload, and that has a strength-oriented approach to it. Let's talk. Do you want to talk about like just like how to rotate your key lifts and maybe dig into some examples for people?
Yes, I mean, the one example I like to use is like chin-ups. So let's say you're doing weighted chin-ups, and every workout where you're doing weighted chin-ups, let's say you're adding 2.5 pounds. So maybe you're starting at like 20-pound chin-ups for 4 or 5 reps, and then at each workout you're adding that 2.5. So maybe in a month or two, maybe you're up to 40 pounds on chin-ups, and now at this 40-pound mark, you're stuck. You can't really. You try adding 2.5 pounds, maybe you lose a rep, or maybe you struggle and you don't go all the way up, and you kind of. And it's just not as smooth as it was before. That's fine. That will happen. So now what you want to do is you want to the next workout you want to change the variation. So instead of doing a chin-up grip, you might do a pull-up grip, and you might be a bit weaker at first on pull-up grips, so you're probably not going to be able to do 40 pounds, but maybe you go back down to 25 pounds, or you just kind of feel it out, find a weight that's going to challenge you for the first set of 4 to 6 reps, and then you do 25 pounds, and the next workout you come in, you'll find it very easy to add that 2.5 pounds. So maybe you'll build up to 45-pound pull-ups, and then when you go back like over the course of couple like 2 months, then when you go back to chin-ups, you'll probably be really strong on chin-ups where 40 pounds will be a joke, and then for the next few weeks, adding 2.5 pounds will be easy, and then maybe you get stuck at, let's say you get stuck at 55-pound chin-ups. Well then, what do? You go back to pull-ups, and then you work on bringing pull-ups up. You get strong on pull-ups, and you do that for a couple months, and then maybe your pull-ups stall. So then you go back to chin-ups, and then maybe you get your chin-ups up to 65 pounds this time, and then then you get stuck at 65. Well, then you go back to pull-ups, and then maybe you get stuck really quickly. So maybe you're getting stuck. You're only going up 5 pounds before you get stuck. Maybe you do a third exercise. So instead of just doing chin-ups and pull-ups, maybe you do neutral grip chin-ups, or maybe you do assisted one-arm chin-ups. And so you're always switch. Once you get plateaued, once you hit your personal record and you can't break that personal record, you switch the variation, and then you work on getting stronger at that variation. And then when you get stuck, you go back to the other variation, and this will work. It's almost like, I'm trying to think of a good analogy. of what you're doing. Um, a lot of lifters, what they do is the two-step forward, one-step back approach, where let's say you get stuck at 225 on bench press, well then you start down at 205, and then you start building up from 205, back up over 225 to maybe 235, and then you go down to 215, and you build up from 215 to 245. And so the idea with the two-step forward, one-step back approach is when you get stuck at a weight, you go back to an easier weight, and then you start adding weight, even though it's really easy. When you get to your previous personal record, it's not going to be that hard. This is what like Bill Starr talks about in 5x5. This is okay, but I don't like it, especially if you're trying to really build muscle. If you're not really training hard and you're stopping before failure, like several reps before failure, well then you're not going to build much muscle. I find the exercise rotation that Westside Barbell uses to be the most amazing way to train for long-term strength and muscle gains.
Interesting. So yeah, I mean, let's dig into that a little bit. So what are the main differences then? Is it literally just about a different variation, a similar but different variation of one exercise to to mix it up while still hitting the proper movement?
Well, I created a free report for everyone listening right now, where they can see all my favorite exercise variations for all the core movements: incline presses, bench presses, shoulder presses, chin ups, curls, and leg movements and stuff. You guys can go get that at kinobody.com/86. But to answer your question, Tom, yeah, it's like just a small adjustment. So on the chin up example, we're just changing the hand position. We went from chin up grip to neutral grip or pull up grip. You can also change the width. You can go from like a shoulder width grip to a slightly wider grip. For bench press, if you get stuck on bench press, you might go to a close grip bench press. So you're bringing your hands in. That's going to be a different stimulus. You could also, if you're doing incline bench press and you're stuck in an incline bench press, you could switch from barbells to dumbbells, and then get strong on dumbbells, and then go back to barbells. That works really well. It works really well. Some people like to get to switch from dumbbells to barbells. You have to be very proficient on those tools. So if you're someone that's new to doing barbell bench press, and then you switch to dumbbells for a month, and you go back to barbell, you'll probably be weaker because you still haven't mastered that technical skill of lifting a barbell or lifting dumbbells. But someone that's already very proficient at doing the technique, then when they switch to dumbbells or barbells, they'll be stronger when they go back. Because I had someone ask me about that. They said like, hey, like I switched to dumbbells and then I went back to bench press and I was weaker. Well, it's like because if you haven't been bench pressing very long and you haven't mastered that technique, then just by not doing that specific exercise for a couple months, you're going to be weaker at it. But someone like me is like, I've been doing these lifts for a long time, so it's not an issue. But then even if that person does go back and is a bit weaker on the barbell, well then in 2 workouts they'll be back and above what they did last time, so it's not a big deal.
Hmm. That's awesome. And so what about what about different exercises for, you covered like bench press, talked about chin ups, pull ups. Let's just like go like one exercise per like muscle group.
Yeah, sure. So
Just to round out the examples.
yeah, so for shoulder press, you might do standing barbell press. Then if you stall on that, you might do a seated dumbbell shoulder press. If you stall on that, you might do handstand push-ups. So you might do standing one arm dumbbell military press. For bench press, you might get stuck on bench press. So you might do close grip bench press, or you might do floor press. We just work on the top range of the motion. For barbell curls, you might do dumbbell curls. You might do incline dumbbell curls. You might do cable curls. There's so many different variations you can switch from. For triceps, you might do rope cable pushdowns, or you might do skull crushers. You might do one-arm cable pushdowns. For rows, you might do bent over dumbbell rows. You might do TY rows. You might do cable rows. The variations really are endless. For incline bench press, you might do barbell. You might do dumbbell. You could even do like a incline barbell bench press off the rack where you set the pins a bit higher, so you're doing like half the range of motion to get strong on that top half. The variations are really endless. I only really recommend using two exercises in your routine, like like one variation and one main movement. That way, you can progress faster on your main movement. So, if you're doing bench press and every time you stall on bench press, you go to close grip bench press, you get strong in close grip, and then you go back to bench press. That will be faster progression than doing bench press for a month and close grip bench press for a month, and then some other bench press variation. You want to just stick to one variation at least until you need to use another one.
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and great advice too. And there's the thing that I want to highlight out of all of that is, I mean, you've said it before. You do if you stall on one lift, spend like drop back down or do another lift. Obviously, you drop down on it because you hadn't been building it up for the last X weeks or months. But so you start lower at a lower weight with a different exercise, another variation of it, and you work back up to it. But keep in mind, it's like I know that every week I try to add either weight to the bar or I try to hit the top end. Like I just shoot for really one more rep. If I'm not at the top end of the rep range for the lifts that I'm doing, I just try to get one more rep. If I hit the top end of the rep range twice in a row on all on all the sets, then I'll move up in weight. And so I know that it's incredibly frustrating when you hit the gym week after week and you don't see the weight going up, or you don't or you're not hitting more reps. Like I know how frustrating that is. And so with this, it's a way to get around that and to use exercise variation and mixing up your lifts, like you said, only really one other lift per main muscle group so you can progress faster. But by mixing these up, it's going to help you eventually bust through that plateau if it is in reality a plateau. But not only that, it is what I got out of all that was that it's a long-term approach. Like this isn't like, hey, I'm going to go, I'm stalling on bench, so I'm going to do dumbbell bench for 2 weeks, and I'm going to bust through the plateau, and I'm going to be back to adding weight or reps to the bar. And that's not the case. I mean, in some cases, you're training with the variation of the exercise for weeks or months. You could be hitting dumbbell bench for 2 or 3 months before transitioning back to regular barbell bench press, in which case you'd have to work back up to that, and eventually you most likely would surpass the weight that you plateaued on before. But it's a longer term approach. So instead of like trying to get all the short term gains and thinking that going in with the mentality that you're going to do dumbbell bench for 2 weeks and all of a sudden you're going to be limitless, I would encourage everyone to look at it as a longer term strategy to eventually making more gains than just beating your head against like a brick wall and installing on lifts as a
Yeah,
result of it.
that's right. I mean, ideally, if you're switching the movement, you want to add like 10 pounds to that exercise before you go back to your original one. So if you're stalled on chin-ups and you go in to do pull-ups, well, at least you want to build up your pull-ups by at least 10 pounds. That's good if someone's more advanced. If someone's more intermediate, I mean, you could try and build up a lift by 20 pounds before you go back to that original movement, and then you're gonna be so much stronger. Like if you get stuck on a bench press at 200 barbell bench press at 200 pounds, and then you go to dumbbells and you do dumbbells and you're like, damn, like you're only doing 70 pounds, and then you go from like, or maybe it's 75 pounds, and then you go from 75-pound dumbbells up to like 85 or 90-pound dumbbells. Well, that's a big increase in your strength. So then when you go to barbell, maybe at first like 200 pounds feels a bit awkward because you're new to it. But honestly, if you build a lot of strength on dumbbells, you probably even be stronger when you go back to barbell bench press. And then for the next few weeks, as you get used to that movement again, your strength will blast up. And you could very well be doing 225 at that point.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so again, for I mean, if you guys do want, kind of, I guess it's like a cheat sheet almost of these exercise variations. Greg, you put together, I think it's actually called the exercise variation cheat sheet or something like that. But either way,
exercise rotation tactics.
yeah, exercise rotation tactics, and it's at kinobody.com/86. Free download, really quick. I mean, it's only a few pages, but it's like really helpful because if you're stalling on any, I think you use like all muscle groups, and all the key Kinobody lifts as examples. But if you guys are stalling on any one of your lifts, it's a really, really valuable tool to have in your arsenal, and being able to to alternate your key lifts so you don't hit plateaus.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's a great thing to have. if you're still making gains, don't do this yet. You're still making great progress. Don't do this yet. Only do it when you need to do it. That's the difference between my sort of philosophy of changing it up and a lot of other philosophies where it's like mix it up all the time, never do the same thing again. It's like no, if something's working, stick to it. Don't change it up. That's how you spin your tires for months and months.
Hmm.
So that's the way to do it. keep
Yeah.
keep making progress for as long as you can on the routine that you're doing, and then when it stops working, well, now let's do some different variations. Let's keep building it up, and let's stick that reverse pyramid training setup because it works so well. Let's go heavy and then kind of do 2 more sets with a bit of a lighter weight and get a bit more reps. It helps build muscle, helps maximize strength gains, and really that's the way to do it. So I mean, if you guys want to get that for free, you can go to kinobody.com/86 and check that out. And I guess, Tom, should we just wrap up now, or?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the last thing that I want to say is that um, a plateau isn't just a plateau in strength. And there's as I see it, there's two different ways to progress in your lifts, either adding weight to the bar or adding reps in your sets. And so if you're following like reverse pyramid training protocol, let's say you're doing 4 to 6, 6 to 8, and 8 to 10, you might be using the same weight for 3 weeks in a row to hit the top end of the rep range for all three of those sets. But adding one rep, like when I go to the gym, even if I don't add weight to the bar, I'm trying to get one more rep. And when you go in with that mentality and like small improvements every single week, it's going to translate to big results. But I don't want people to think that because they haven't actually went up in weight for like 1 or 2 weeks that they're plateauing and that they need to jump around and exercise like variations in their workouts. So if you're not progressing in either weight or reps, though, I mean, this might be something for you. But progression is both weight and number of reps. So if you're maxing out at the top end of the rep range, but you move on, but you can't add weight to the bar, that's one thing. But anyway, that's how I look at it, and I just try to make small improvements every single week. And if you are plateauing, if you are stuck at a particular weight, then you might want to throw in a couple variations. But either way, you can get all those, the exercise rotation tactics PDF at kinobody.com/86, and it's pretty helpful. It's a pretty cool tool.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. That's exactly right. All right, guys, we will talk soon.
All right,
Take
bye guys.
care.